Today's presentation is by our illustrious Mike Stagg. We appreciate Mike preparing a presentation on the razor's edge, preventing cuts and punctures. What an important subject, Mike.
Sometimes when my students you believe this? Oh, will you look at that? Oh, just call me Mr. Butterfingers.
So obviously there's a few things going on here, right? I mean, we're not even going to talk about the creepy mustache and the gigantic hair that the guy has, but I mean, look at the table saw. No guarding, right? No PPEs. So obviously there's some things going on here that we need to take into consideration to prevent some cuts, lacerations, and punctures. And so that's really what we're going to go through and talk about today. First off, though, we want to run a little contest with you guys this morning and see if the first one who was able to identify this guy, not me, the other one, the much better looking guy in the photos here. Think about the presentation today. Think about what we're talking about. And if you can identify this person, just type it in the chat box. First person to get it, we'll send you out some trust swag, send you a trust t-shirt. So I was able to meet that gentleman a few years ago up at the Sundance Film Festival. Thought it'd be kind of neat to bring him into the presentation here today. So our goals that we want to talk about is we want to understand all the hazards related to preventing cuts, lacerations, and punctures. How can we be prepared for those incidents? We want to utilize some controls, and we'll talk about what each of those controls are, and ultimately how we can protect ourselves. So first thing I wanted to do, first thing in the morning, hit you with a few statistics. That's everyone's favorite thing, first thing coming in. So as Jason mentioned, right, in the trust pool, what we found is that these injuries, cuts, lacerations, and punctures, they regularly rank either third or fourth as the most common workplace injury that we see here. And you can see this graph here on the left-hand side. You can see that cuts and punctures is currently tracking as our number 3 ranked workplace injury, right behind strains and falls and slips, which is kind of alarming to think about. And our average age of employee that we have in here who has a cut or puncture wound is 40 years old and has been with the company or with the organization about 6 years. So think about that for a minute. That's kind of a telling statistic there. And why do you think? I mean, I would have thought it's your 19, your 20, 21-year-old person who's just coming in, your temporary worker, your part-time staff member. They're the person that would be getting hurt the most. Someone who's brand new, because they don't know what they don't know. They may have just been trained or insufficiently trained or whatever it may be. But no, I mean, most commonly we're seeing these kind of injuries happen among someone who's about 40 years old with about 6 years of employment. And that's, I think, because we just get complacent, right? We start thinking to ourselves, I've done this 100,000 times. I've screwed a screw in 100,000 times. I've cut a piece of wood on a bandsaw 100,000 times. I don't need to wear my gloves or my PPE. I don't need to employ some work practice controls. I need to screw this screw in just a little bit. I left my screwdriver in the truck. I can just use my pocket knife. I got a pocket knife right here. That fits really nicely within this flathead. And let's just screw that down. Then things happen. We've done it a million times. And that's when we get complacent and think, let's take a few shortcuts and let's not go and do exactly what we're supposed to. Commonly seen injuries we see: scratches and abrasions, minor cuts that might require some kind of first aid. Among our police officers, among our garbage and waste engineers, also among our health department organizations, we see a lot of needle stick wounds, puncture wounds, and deep lacerations that require some medical attention. So these are just some of the things that we commonly see related to these injuries. Now, what I wanted to do is kind of take you through the case files a little bit. And this is what we were actually seeing this year on folks who have gotten injured and some of our claims coming through. First one here, attempting to fix an open door wedge. They tried to fix it with a personal pocket knife, and the knife slipped and their left index finger was lacerated. So again, not using the right tool for the right job. The employee was replacing a door and trimming with a razor blade for installation of hinges, and they slipped, cutting their left index finger. The middle finger on their right hand was cut when washing a knife. This right here, this is one of the things that terrify us, Jason and I, as risk managers here at the Trust, is our break rooms, right? There's knives, there's cutting utensils, there's blenders and food processors and all sorts of stuff in our break rooms. Do we get complacent too much with these instruments inside of our break rooms, right? Are we as vigilant as we should be? And this employee obviously wasn't. Opening a box with a knife, the knife slipped and cut the end of their right thumb. Just a few more for you. These ones are puncture wounds. After giving client the COVID vaccine, employee recapped the needle and put it in their pocket. Then they felt a poke on their left thigh. The cap was on the needle, but the needle was bent. So they thought they did everything right, but obviously something went wrong. Moving garbage off the pre-sort line to work, finger got stuck with a hypodermic needle. So our folks, our waste management, recycling folks, these apply directly to you as well. While sorting garbage, they grabbed their needle off the conveyor line without realizing it. Also, we have some animal service districts, some folks with cities and towns who have animal control. And sometimes they have to deal with unruly animals. You guys are true American heroes. Cleaning their cat kennel, went to shut the divider. The cat latched onto their hand, biting and scratching the employee. Putting the cat into a kennel, the cat bit the employee's right hand. And those cats can sometimes be super aggressive and super crazy. Just a video here from the case files. Not really. Had to cut it off there because he cusses a little bit after that. But those people, we have those kind of injuries. I'm going to show you a little bit later on in this presentation a really cool contraption that you can use to employ some controls to maybe help out with that situation. But some probable causes of injury that we see. So improper training, right? Could that be a cause of injury that we get from a cut and laceration or puncture? Yeah, absolutely. If they're not trained properly on how to avoid hurting themselves, then absolutely they can get hurt. Rushing or taking shortcuts, right? I think this happens mostly with our veterans, with our experienced workers, those who think, I've done this 100,000 times. I know a faster way to do this or an easier way to do this, so I don't have to put on my PPE, or I don't have to walk back to my truck and get the right tool. Failure to wear the proper PPE. When PPE is prescribed and needs to be used, failure to wear that, definitely causes injury. Missing or improperly adjusted guarding equipment. If we don't have the machine guards on our equipment that needs to, that angle grinder doesn't have that machine guard on it. The table saw doesn't have the guard on it. We could definitely get injured, have a cut, laceration, or a puncture because we are using an improperly adjusted guarding equipment. Improper tool for the job, or our tools in poor condition. Many injuries happen because of a dull or a tool that's in poor condition. Why is that? Because it takes a lot more force, right? When you have a tool that's sharp, that's ready to use, it's so much easier to do something. It's so much easier to do that task. When you have to start to apply more force using that tool is becoming dull. And then therefore, you get to a point where you're using way too much force, and then something can happen. The tool could slip. The cutting material could slip. You could cut yourself. You could slip it and give yourself a puncture wound. There's so many things that can happen if a tool is in poor condition. So we have to make sure that our tools are in optimal condition. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Take a look here at this graphic. There's a lot of things going on here in this workplace. What we want to look at, though, is just some of the things and what could be causing those. So our first one we want to look at, you see this guy over here, he's using this grinding machine. No PPE on, right? I don't see any gloves on this person. I also don't see a guard on this piece of equipment. So there are some injuries that are happening right now because he's not using a properly guarded piece of equipment. What about over here on the left-hand side? You see this car. It's for sale. It's got low miles on it, one owner. probably one of these workers has pasted that up right over the PPE sign. Now, why is that important? Why don't we know how to cover up that PPE sign? Everyone knows they have to wear it. That's just a great reminder for our staff that you have to wear your PPE. You have to wear it, and this is why you have to wear it and for what tasks you have to wear it for. Because you have guys like this who are trying to move a piece of glass, and one of them's got his PPE on, he's got his gloves on, everything looks good. The other gentleman, he's probably older. He might be somebody who is a lot more experienced. He's had lots of training, and he's done this 100,000 times though. Move a piece of glass from one area to the other. Something fast, it's going to be easy, but now he's getting cut on his hand because it's a sharp piece of glass and he didn't wear his PPE. Over here on the workbench, you see you've got some tools hanging out. You've got an axe. I don't know anybody who would hang an axe like that, but it's there. You got the axe, you got the saw, you got the wood saw, you got the straight saw, you got the knives there. Why is that? What's wrong with there? What's wrong? What's going on there? I'm looking at that coffee cup sitting there. Somebody goes to grab that coffee cup and they lift that up, they bump that saw, and what happens? That sharp saw comes right down on top of them. So take a look at how you're storing your equipment, right? Make sure that those sharp tools aren't being stored in an elevated area where they could fall, where they could cause some kind of an injury. And then finally here, this gentleman here, he's using a PPE, isn't he? Yeah, absolutely, he is. Is it the right PPE though? And is it a well-maintained piece of PPE? I don't think so. Look at the holes. He's got holes in the gloves. That might not be the right type of PPE to carry that piece of equipment. So having well-maintained PPE is also a huge, huge thing that's going to help prevent cuts, lacerations, and punctures. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the different mechanisms of prevention that we could use. So we have engineering controls and work practice controls, and then finally we'll talk about PPE. Now, what I'm thinking about here is the injury prevention pyramid. Y'all have probably seen this already if you've been through any kind of an OSHA training. That goes from the most effective down to the least effective. Our most effective forms of prevention of injury are going to be these controls, these engineering controls and work practice controls. This is directly from OSHA that says that engineering and work practice controls shall be used to eliminate or minimize employee exposure. Employee exposure to what though? This is specifically talking about bloodborne pathogens, but we can apply this directly to exposure to a cut, laceration, or puncture hazard, right? Using engineering controls or work practice controls are definitely the most effective way to help prevent these kind of injuries. So engineering controls, what is that? What's an engineering control? An engineering control is a control that isolates or removes the cut hazard from the workplace. So I'm thinking like a self-retracting blade that you see here on the left-hand side of the screen, right? Something that as soon as you take your trigger off of the slide, that immediately closes. So that blade isn't sticking out there when you set it down. Or a self-sheathing needle that you see down here. Self-sheathing needles help in so that you're not like that nurse who recapped the needle, stuck it back in her pocket. That kind of thing wouldn't happen with a self-sheathing needle. So these are engineering controls where you're trying to remove the cut hazard from the workplace, right? Really, really good ideas. Now, for you folks in the animal shelters, remember I told you I would show you something that would help with these situations. This is what I'm talking about. Check this out.
Incredible contraption is called an Easy Nabber, but we just got a panini press here in shelter. Dewey's gonna help me demonstrate how to use it on a free roaming cat. You'll notice that even though we try to catch him 5 or 6 times, he never becomes afraid. It just goes to show how gentle the device can be. Now, if I were in a kennel environment, I would use the Easy Nabber to block off any exit before I go ahead and trap her in there. Now, this is an adoptable kennel, which is much taller than our feral cat kennels, so our feral cats won't just be able to jump right over.
That's a pretty cool little device, right? That's a definite engineering control where you're using a device that takes away the cut puncture hazard, right? The cut puncture hazard, the crazy cat that's climbing up your leg, your pinky. And this is that panini press is what they call it, taking away that hazard from the workplace. So an engineering control is taking those hazards just completely away. If those can't be done, then we look at work practice controls. Work practice controls means you have a control that reduces the likelihood of exposure by altering the method in which the task is performed. So like this here, you see a recapping of needles should never be done in a two-handed process, because if something slips, something pokes through, then you get a needle stick, right? Work practice control states that these are the rules we're going to follow in order to help us stay safe, because we know that there is a hazard. We're not able to eliminate it by, using engineering controls or a contraption or a device or something of some sort that's going to remove it. We know it's still here, but now we want to reduce the likelihood that it happens by employing some guidelines. And so some of those guidelines we want to look at are, number one is to maintain sharp tools. Directly from OSHA, they say each employer shall be responsible for the safe condition of tools and equipment used by employees, including tools and equipment which may be furnished by employees. So it's our job as employers to make sure that our employees have safe and sharp and ready to go tools. So our best work practice control is to maintain sharp tools, maintain those tools, and make sure that they're always ready to be used in a safe manner. Some other work practice controls we can do is to make sure we're always using the proper tool for the job. This is a great rule to put in place. Make sure that the tool designed is for the task. A screwdriver is not a hammer, right? There are many times that we look at something and think, oh, I could just smack that with the end of this screwdriver and it'll go right back into place. Or I could use this pocket knife in my pocket to shim this out. You want to make sure that you're using the tool that is designed for that task. So a screwdriver is not a hammer. A knife is not a screwdriver. Okay, a screwdriver is a screwdriver. That's what it's used for. So use the tool that's been designed for the task. When you're picking a tool, right, make sure it fits your hand size. There are many different hand sizes. People are different. Body compositions are different. Hand sizes are obviously different. So you want to make sure that the tool fits your hand size. What does that mean to us? That means you're able to keep your wrist straight during use of that tool. It requires minimal force to use. That means the tool's sharp. That means it fits right. And that the handle extends beyond your palm. You want to make sure that that handle goes past the palm of your hand. Why is that important, do you think? Well, because it helps to keep that tool under control, right? It's not going to slip out. You've got some length to it. You got some length to that tang on a knife or something like that, that helps to have you control that tool so you know exactly where that tool is going to go. Okay, so while cutting, always keep that tool under control. Okay, keep the item you're cutting secured. Don't hold work in your hand while cutting. There's been a time in my life where I was holding something in my hand. I was like, it's just a short, small cut. I just need to make this cut real quick. And something happened and I slipped and I got the scars to prove it, that I didn't have a work practice control in place where I was having that item be not held in my hand while I was cutting it. So what can we do? I mean, we need to keep it sturdy. We need to keep it steady so that we can make a good, nice, straight cut. So what can we do? Take it and secure it with some clamps to the table. Then make your cut, okay? Make sure that the path of that cut is clear and the non-cutting hand is out of that path. So, I mean, I'm sure these are knife safety things that we've all heard in the past, right? Always cut away from your body. So if that knife slips, that material slips, the knife or the cutting instrument doesn't slip into you. It slips away from you and away from your body and anything that you may be that may be in the way. While using thick material, use several passes of the blade, right? This isn't something that you want to take one big long cut and try and get it all done at the same time. Thick material, make sure you do it several different times. I'm thinking like carrying groceries in, right? Will you carry groceries in from your car? How many trips do you make? If you're anything like me, you make one trip. You have 8 bags on one arm, 8 bags on the other, so you don't have to go down to the car twice. When we're cutting though, we want to make sure that we're taking our time. We're not doing it in one pass, not carrying all 16 grocery bags at the same time, but that we're cutting the material using several passes of the blade as we're cutting that material. That just makes it incredibly much more safer for us as we're using those sharp instruments. So, I talk about this knife safety thing, and it reminds me of my son. He's 8 years old now. He was 7 at the time. And we had just gone through like this knife safety class thing with him. My son, his name's Parker. He has ADD. He has ADHD. Probably gets it from his dad. And we're practicing with knife safety, and we're carving, little things out of soap with little plastic kitchen knives. And he's so excited because he's went through knife safety. So he thinks, oh, I can have a knife. I can have a pocket knife. And it's getting close to Christmas time. And my grandma comes and asks, hey, Park, what do you think you want for Christmas? Oh, I want a pocket knife. That would be great if I had a pocket knife. I went through knife safety and I know how to use it safe and how to cut safely. And what are mom and dad doing? We're sitting back saying, ooh, I don't know. I don't think so. Don't get that for him. Christmas Day rolls around. Parker opens his presents from grandma. What does Parker get? Parker gets a brand new Swiss Army knife. He's so excited. So we FaceTime grandma. And he says, look, grandma, thank you for my gifts, my Swiss Army knife. Let me show you how to use it. I know how to do this because I've done knife safety. And he takes out the knife, opens the knife up, and he says, now this is how you close it safely. Promptly sets that knife blade right down on his hand and tries to shut it. Nice laceration right across the palm of his hand. So obviously, we needed to do more work with Parker. We needed to do more work with grandma. So that was a mom fail. That was a dad fail. That was a grandma fail. We failed Parker in that situation because we didn't train him enough so that he could come in and he could have that piece of equipment and be ready with it. Okay. So personal protective equipment. This is our last line of defense that we're using, right? Our hand protection, last line of defense. So if we've used some work practice controls and engineering controls, we've tried to eliminate the hazard. We've tried to minimize the hazard. We've tried to put rules in place and have certain controls in place so we're not getting injured, but we still have to do the job. It's still got to be done. And we know that there's a hazard present that we could get hurt on. Now we've got to have PPE. Now is when we start to put the gloves on, and buying the right thing is super, super important. So using the right kind of glove or the right kind of PPE for the right protection, making sure that it's available and it's ready to use. So if it's available and it's prescribed in your policies, then you've got to use it. You have to use it. Your employees have to use it. Everyone's got to use it if it's been required. That means proper donning and doffing. How do you take that glove off? How do you put it on? How do you make sure that they're well maintained? Okay. And looking at the proper disposal and maintenance of those gloves, making sure that they stay current, making sure that they're in the optimal form in order to do their job. So there's many types of gloves out there, right? Many kinds of hand protection. So which one is the right kind of protection that we want to look at? So here for the work that we do, what we want to look for an anti-cut device for our hand protection is look for an ANSI level A something, okay? ANSI A refers to a cut protection on a glove. And, it goes from ANSI A1 to ANSI A9. A1 is your light cut hazards. A2 to A3 is your demo, your wire stripping, pipe threading, cutting. A4 is your medium. So drywall, electrical, HVAC. We've all got employees. We have a maintenance department that may do these things, that may use wire stripping, that may do some drywall within our facilities, have some electrical. They may use electrical. They may do some kind of HVAC work. We should look at the gloves they're using and make sure that we've got a PPE policy in place that they use those gloves. A5 is our medium and high. So that's metal handling, cutting, drywall, ductwork. So our folks who are working on our HVAC, that's the kind of glove we want them to have. A5, A4, those are the things we want. Now, our folks in our garbage, our recycling departments, okay, we're looking at A6 to A9. So a super high cut rating, a super thick glove, because you don't know what's coming through that garbage. You don't know what's coming through those recycling. You want to make sure that you're not going to get poked or stabbed, or you're not going to have a laceration when you're working with that really sharp, really heavy material that you might be dealing with in those recyclings. So just in summary, accept that these things can happen, accept that you can get cut, that you can get punctured. Just because you've been doing it for 100,000 years like me doesn't mean then it's not going to happen to you. Just because it hasn't happened yet, it could happen. So accept that it can happen. We do that by preparing for it, evaluating and implementing our engineering and work practice controls. Look at the rules that are in place. Look at different ways that we could potentially do the same task while eliminating or minimizing the hazards that we have around cuts and lacerations. And always choose the right tool and the right PPE for the job. I mean, that is so important to remember, that we use the right tool and use the right PPE for the job that we're trying to do. A hammer is not a screwdriver. Remember that. Last thing is just to think, right? These machines, these tools, these knives, they don't have brains. We've got to use our own, right? Think about what you're doing. Think about it. Think about the cutaway. Think about several passes with thick materials. Okay. Think about, is this the right tool for the right job? And do I have the right PPE on me? That way we can help to avoid what we're talking about here, our cuts, lacerations, and punctures. So you don't end up as a Parker with your hand cut down the middle. You think about it. Okay. All right. That's what I got today for us.
Great presentation, Mike. I appreciate that that good message that we have there. Folks, if you have any questions, type those into the chat box and we'll see if we can stump the dummy now. And pick on Mike a little bit if you've got a question for him. Just a bit of an update as we're waiting for those questions to come in. We did award a winner, and it was quick this time. We had Bobby Snyder came up with the correct response of Razor Ramon.
Nice job, Bobby.
That was pretty good. So we'll be sending that shirt out to Bobby. So it took a little longer in the first session. So good job. That's a challenging one. I'm just trying to see, not seeing any questions or comments come in here. I guess any addition I would have to that is just to re-emphasize what Mike has said. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what you're doing. I looked at my left index finger, and that's the one that has most of the scars on it. That's the one that takes the abuse when I don't think when I'm doing a job. And anyway, those are things to remember there. Just looking there, looks like we got some kudos there for your class, but I don't see any questions coming in. So you must have covered the subject very well. Final words, Mike?
Nope. Thanks for being here. Just as a final point of trivia, Razor Ramon's finishing move that he used to finish off his opponents, I looked this up last break, is actually called the Razor's Edge. So hey, it all comes full circle.
Razor's Edge. Well, very good. You guys just didn't have any idea the quality of entertainment that you would get here today, and along with some good material. Razor Ramon. All right, folks, we appreciate your attendance today. If you want to get prepared for an OSHA inspection, come back in a little less than a half hour, and we'll be presenting on getting prepared for an OSHA inspection. If you haven't signed up, go to utahtrust.gov and click on training and events. You can sign up right there. Thanks, folks. Everybody go out and have a safe day.
Thanks, everyone.